At my son's funeral, I went up to the bedroom to get a handkerchief. My eyes were swollen with tears, but I kept crying. When I opened the door, he was hugging her. His hands were on her waist, and his lips were on her forehead. He kissed her on the forehead and said, "I love only you." It was my husband, and he was kissing our daughter-in-law. My name is Jennifer, 65, Southern California bones, Midwestern grit. My boy Ethan was 34 and golden, all forward motion, ideas that grew legs, a laugh you could spot across a crowded terminal. He died on Highway 105, rain slick and impatient slick, hurrying to a flight he never made. I can't make the rain apologize, and I can't make the clock run backward. I can, however, make a few living people wish it would. I didn't scream when I saw them. God help me, I did not. The scream stood in my throat like a choir note waiting for the conductor. For a second, I wanted to go feral claw, scratch, swing my purse like a medieval mace. I had the handkerchief in one hand and a grief-shaped tornado in the other, and I could have laid him out flat, my husband of 40 years, the same mouth that said, for better or worse, now whispering to my daughter-in-law that she was his only better. But from downstairs came the organist's muffled chords and the creak of our old stairs as guests shifted. "Mrs. Hale?" Someone called from below. "They're ready for the remembrance. Ready for the remembrance." Well, wasn't that polite? I tucked my scream into the handkerchief, folded both with the care of a nurse dressing a wound, and slid them into my pocket. I looked at the two of them long enough to leave a frost on their skin. "Button your dress," I said to her, voice even as a ruler. "And you," I said to him, "wipe your mouth. You've got funeral on it." I didn't wait for their excuses. The strangled Jennifer, it's not what, or the tear-glossed tremble of her lips. I turned on my kitten heels, which, incidentally, have carried me through births, layoffs, PTA mutinies, and a grenade of Thanksgiving politics. They were more than equal to adultery, and I went back downstairs to bury my son. People say funerals are love distilled. That afternoon felt like love mixed with formaldehyde, kept presentable so the living didn't faint. 100 bodies in my house, men from Ethan's firm, cashmere-edged wives, neighbors with casserole logic, a high school coach who still called him Bud. They looked to me the way folks look toward a lighthouse, to make sure it's still burning so they don't have to admit how dark it's gotten. So I burned. I shook hands. I kissed papery cheeks. I told the funny story about Ethan trying to microwave an avocado once. I smiled at the flowers and thanked the people who had copied their sympathy messages from Pinterest. I poured coffee. I did not break. Grief has a strange courtesy to it. It will wait politely until your last guest has left, until the last plastic fork has been counted and the last, if you need anything, has been stacked in the sink. Then it arrives with its shoes off and settles on your chest. But my grief had to take a number because rage had already found a chair. When the crowd thinned to just family and the organist went quiet, we brought Ethan home, the urn a pale weight that felt like half the moon. I put him on the table we'd bought the summer we nearly divorced and reconciled over a glue gun centerpiece. I set him in the middle, centered my center, my boy. Then I sat opposite my husband and my daughter-in-law. The room smelled like lilies and lemon pledge and the faint heat of bodies that had wept, and suddenly the house I loved felt like an accomplice. "I am going to say this once," I told them, my voice new to my own ears. "You will pay dearly for this." Maya, my daughter-in-law, until about 5 minutes prior, laughed. It was hysterical in pitch and juvenile in heart. Her eyeliner had gone sailboat at the corners, and I thought, with a clarity that felt mercifully petty, that waterproof mascara actually means nothing is truly waterproof. "Pay," she said, "a little too high." "Oh, Jennifer, you're not the one who sets the bill." She leaned back as if auditioning for a villainess in a streaming drama. "I'll take everything. Ethan's company, the accounts, and this house." She glanced at the crown molding like a real estate agent counting her commission. "My parents? They can finally get out of that rental you sneered at. Because this," she splayed her hand, rings catching light, "was bought with Ethan's money. All of it. Mine, by law." Across from her, my husband flinched like a child hearing fireworks for the first time. "Maya," he hissed, Choose your words. He held one hand palm up toward me, the same hand he had laid flat on a church Bible decades ago, and in that gesture was a crooked little plea for mercy. Oh, now you want her to choose her words? I cocked my head, calm as a carp pond. Fascinating. They argued. Of course they did. Lovers are loyal until there's a ledger. He told her this wasn't the time. She told him it was exactly the time. He said she needed to respect Ethan's memory. She said he'd lost the right to be remembered honorably the day he kept 3 secret accounts and called them tax planning. I learned new things from their quarrel. Every betrayal is an anthropology lesson. I let them flail for a minute more. Then I raised a flat palm and the air fell obediently. We will not do this in front of my son, I said, nodding to the urn. Not a single syllable more. I stood. But hear me clearly. You will both regret underestimating a woman who taught herself to code at 48 and rebuilt a kitchen with YouTube and stubbornness. I am not a phase of grief. I am the storm that comes after. I didn't slam the door. I didn't throw a vase. I slid my coat on, the navy wool one Ethan bought me last Christmas that still smelled vaguely of him, bergamot and pencil shavings and a hint of airport pretzels, and I left my own house. The porch light was still on, though the sun had given up hours ago. The sky was black-socked and full of weather. My car started like it had been waiting for this errand all its life. James Whitaker, our family lawyer, lived 3 streets over, on a cul-de-sac where everyone's grass behaved. His porch light was off. His living room was a column of honey light from a single lamp. I rang, the kind of ring people do when they've decided to stop bleeding and start stitching. He opened the door in sock feet and a linen shirt, eyes soft with sleep and sorrow. "Jennifer," he said, stepping aside instantly. "God, I'm so sorry. Come in." "I'm sorry for the hour," I said, stepping into the warm, book-lined refuge that made me want to stop and touch spines. "But I need legal clarity before I commit a crime of passion and ruin an otherwise spotless record." His mouth quirked. "That's the most Jennifer thing you've ever said." He poured coffee the way only a widower knows how, carefully, grateful for something practical to do. I didn't circle the truth. I placed it gently between us like a hot pan. "I found them upstairs," I said. "My husband and Maya." I watched the news register on his face the way a storm registers on ocean. He put the cup down, both hands flat on the counter like he was steadying the whole house. "Ethan suspected she was cheating," he said, voice lower now. "He came to see me last month. He didn't know with whom." He winced, and the human part of me reached out and squeezed his forearm. "I'm sorry you had to learn it this way. I'm sorrier that it was." "Here, was Ethan drafting anything?" I asked. "A will? A clause? Anything that gives me a map instead of a machete?" James sighed. He asked me to review options. He wanted a fidelity clause in a postnup. If one party cheated, they forfeited rights to marital property. But he never signed. We talked twice. He planned to bring it up after he got back from his trip to Denver. He swallowed. "Jennifer, there's no will, no trust nested for contingencies. By default, the estate falls under intestacy laws. As his spouse, Maya inherits the bulk. Without a challenge, she'll have claim to the house you and Robert bought. If it can be argued Ethan paid the remainder with community funds or through improvements, she'll aim for the company too, as personal representative." I absorbed it like rain. "So legally," I said, "she's a tornado with a key to my front door." "For the moment," he conceded. "But law is a topography, not a prison. There are ridgelines. There are paths. I want every path," I said. "And a few ridgelines." I looked him dead on. "How fast can we secure Ethan's devices, emails, and the company's data room so nothing leaks? And I need a readout on Maya bank accounts. Credit, any discretions that wander around at night and wear cologne. I want her legal closet opened and the light left on." He nodded, lawyer brain warming like a good engine. "We can file for an emergency injunction to preserve digital assets. If you're named as next of kin with standing for immediate protective relief as mother of the deceased founder, we can argue unique knowledge and a risk of spoliation." He watched my face. "It's a mouthful, but it means we can keep people's itchy fingers off Ethan's work while we sort things." "What about my husband?" I asked, and the word felt ridiculous, like a coat I'd put on inside out. "He's been siphoning something off, emotionally for sure, financially, probably. I need to know." "Separate issue," James said. "Sadly common. We can track transfers, especially if he's clumsy enough to have funded anything recently. But the house, Jennifer, did you and Robert hold it as joint tenants with right of survivorship?" "Yes. And the refinance 5 years ago whose name was on it. Robert had already passed." I looked at my hands. "It's in mine. Then the house is yours regardless of her shrieked monologues," he said, a dry heat in his tone that made me like him so much I could cry. "What Ethan contributed after 19 is noise unless someone decides to make it music. We can defend that," I breathed. The first loose button tightened. James slid a legal pad toward me. "2 more things. 1. Maya's claim to the business will be only as spouse of decedent, not co-founder. If we can seat a neutral administrator, or better, you as special administrator due to urgent need and familiarity, we control the immediate narrative. 2. If there's evidence of marital misconduct, some states allow a sliver of equitable adjustment. It's not a magic sword, but it's sharper than a butter knife." "Good," I said. "I look terrible in butter." He had the decency to smile. Then his face sobered. "Jennifer, this will get ugly. It's midnight and you're planning a war. I'm 90% mother and 10% hurricane," I said. "Ugly's just another word for necessary with bad lighting." I tapped my fingertips on the pad, each tap a decision. "I'm going to make them speak the truth out loud. That's step 1. How? By letting them forget I know how to set a stage." I stood. "You'll get the orders filed at dawn. I'll handle the performance." Back in my driveway, the porch light I'd left on made the hydrangeas look theatrical. Inside, the house had been tittied in that guilty way, dishes stacked, tissues gone, my husband and Maya undoubtedly back in their separate corners, rethreading lies. The urn sat solid on the table, moon half and patient. I touched it with 2 fingers. "We're not done, baby," I whispered. "Not with love. Not with justice." I took a pen and a sticky note and wrote 1 sentence, then pressed it to the inside of the pantry door where I keep the good snacks and the bad secrets. Act I, let them believe they're safe. The next morning, before the ink on James's filings could dry in the courthouse printer, I put on makeup that said "Gracious Widow," pearls that said "Don't underestimate me," and a smile that said absolutely nothing true. I texted Maya, "Brunch? We should talk about arrangements and the company." I CC'd my husband, of course. Let lovers make a triangle out of a line I draw. They'll never notice when the angles change. Her reply was instant. "Noon. Your place." A little house emoji, as if it were already hers. Perfect. I brewed coffee so strong you could stand a spoon in it. I laid out cinnamon rolls the whole neighborhood thinks come from my oven, but actually come from a bakery in Echo Park owned by a woman with forearms like a farm goddess. I opened the windows for the kind of breeze that makes truth feel possible. And then, because I am my mother's daughter and because strategy without flair is just accounting, I set Ethan's old voice recorder in the azalea pot on the windowsill by the table. The little red light winked at me like a co-conspirator. When they walked in, she in a black dress that would have been tasteful if it hadn't been weaponized, he in a suit worn like confession. I was ready to pour coffee, pass napkins, and feed them exactly the version of me they wanted to see. "Thank you for coming," I said sweetly, gesturing to the chairs. "There's so much to sort. We'll need to be a team." Maya smiled like a cat that had memorized the can opener. "Of course," my husband said, his eyes tired and full of coward. "We're family. For now," I said, and lifted my cup. The recorder's red light warmed, patient as sunrise. And act I began. "The thing about brunch is it makes people underestimate you. No one expects an ambush with warm pastries." We sat at the old oak table, Ethan between us in ash and absence, while the cinnamon rolls fogged the window and the recorder blinked like a tiny heartbeat in the azalea pot. I drafted a list. I began, sliding a page across the table like it was a polite conversation and not a fuse. Funeral thank you notes, estate paperwork, Ethan's company obligations, and the house utilities while everything's in transition. Maya's eyes snagged on the word company. I've already emailed Ethan's COO, she said, buttering a roll within an inch of its life. Told him I'll be stepping in as majority beneficiary and temporary acting head. Stability is key. Optics, too. Stability is such a soothing word for a takeover, I said pleasantly, and sipped my coffee. My husband Robert, if we're being government formal, made a strangled sound, which in our marriage dialect means please don't start a fire with your words. Poor man. Forgot he'd already lit the match. I also told my parents, Maya went on, oblivious to his warning, that we'll move them into the guest house once this place is signed over. They've sacrificed a lot. Sacrifice, I repeated. Is that what we're calling borrowing $20,000 from Ethan's line of credit to fund your mother's candle shop? I set my cup down. The plink of ceramic on wood is such a satisfying period. Her jaw twitched. He offered, after he found romantic texts in your cloud account, romantic being generous. They read like a middle schooler found a thesaurus. I smiled. He came to James about a fidelity clause the week before he died. Did you know that? Silence is never quiet. In that second, I could hear the creak of the house settling, Ethan's old Labrador snoring in my memory, the world outside pretending it wasn't full of stupidly brave birds. The recorder kept blinking. So patient. Robert cleared his throat. We're all grieving, he said. Let's not weaponize. Grief isn't my weapon, I said softly. It's my shield. The weapon is competence. Maya's face sharpened. Let's be plain, she said, a lawyer's kid trying on litigation for brunch. I'm the spouse. No will means I inherit. The company needs a face investors can trust. That's me. I've been supporting Ethan for years, late-night strategy sessions, networking, hosting. I'm not some amateur from accounting. I know how to carry a room. Carrying a room is different from carrying payroll, I murmured. But do continue. This is fascinating. She leaned forward. I'm not the bad guy because your son wasn't the saint you built. He had NDA headaches, 2 pending audits, she lowered her voice, and he was looking into ways to keep money from the IRS. Don't tell me you didn't know. Robert's head snapped. Maya, what? She turned to him, drunk on her own relevance. She wants the truth. Ethan was drowning. He told me he wished we could start over without certain entanglements. And what did you tell him? I asked, tone light as meringue. I told him to sell the house, she said, eyes flicking to the crown molding again like it was a lover. Cash out some options. Stop playing hero with family finances. He spent money to take care of you to your medical bills last year. The kitchen remodel? He resented it. He said he felt owned by history. Robert flinched. There are flinches you never forget. That one looked like an earthquake had grabbed his ribcage. Interesting, I said, because there's a file in Ethan's desk labeled Parents Confidential with notes about a retirement unit near the botanical garden and a savings plan that would have covered the last 5 years of our lives even if he'd never sold a toothbrush again. He was trying to spare us asking, not spare us helping. I let that sit with her. Do you know what else is in that desk? Her nostrils did a little flare. Dog that smells a trap. Good. Sticky notes, I said cheerfully. Ethan loved his sticky notes. With passwords to things he should never have written down. I tilted my head. I'm sure the court will enjoy the ones labeled Maya Telegram and Rob Travel Wallet. Robert's coffee cup rattled against the saucer. Jennifer. Oh, I'm sorry, I said, eyes wide. I assumed we were being plain. There's a moment in any con where the room tilts and the mark either grabs a handrail or falls through the floor. I watched Maya search for a handrail. She chose the wrong one. Look, she said, palms up, switching to Fox compassion voice, the one that makes nurses roll their eyes. We've all made mistakes. I never meant to hurt Ethan. He and I, she gestured uselessly at the urn. We were finished long before the accident. I only found comfort with Robert after months of feeling invisible. We can be kind to each other. I'll make sure you're not left destitute, Jennifer. Oh, bless your philanthropic heart, I said. You'll make sure? Robert finally found his backbone and tried to staple it to his mouth. Maya, stop. Jennifer, I never don't lie in the house with my son. I snapped, and the room went winter. You will tell the truth in full sentences, and you will not insult me with euphemism. How long? He swallowed. 9 months. So the affair had been old enough to gestate. Perfect for a jury's sense of timeline. Thank you, I said, and stood to refill coffee like we were discussing paint colors. And did Ethan know it was you? No, Maya said quickly, then realized she had admitted too much too fast and tried to rewind with her eyes. I mean, he never had proof. He suspected. A colleague. The neighbor's ring camera has proof, I said, mild as oatmeal. You two leaving together at 1 in the morning 3 Fridays running. The Hoa president is a retired video editor. He stabilized the footage for me in exchange for the rosemary focaccia he loves. Bless his carb-driven heart. Maya jolted, fury painting her high. You had no right. This is my street, I said. I have every right to borrow sugar and truth. The front door knocker sounded twice courteous, professional. Robert frowned. Expecting anyone? Yes, I said, and smiled a smile my mother used for salesmen and raccoons. Come in. James's process server stepped into the foyer in a neat blue blazer, one handful of envelopes like a bouquet nobody wanted. He had the good grace to take his hat off, which made me like him instantly. Good morning, Mrs. Hale, he said with a nod. Miss Maya Hale? Mr. Robert Hale? They nodded because paper is gravity. You've been served. The sound those envelopes made when they kissed the table heaven. Inside, temporary restraining orders preserving Ethan's digital and physical business assets from tampering, an emergency motion to appoint me as special administrator pending a hearing, and a subpoena deuces tecum that would make a squirrel cough up nuts. Maya skimmed, went white, then tried to laugh. Cute, she said too loudly. This won't hold. I'll have my lawyer quash it by lunch. Please do, I said sweetly. Anyone who files to quash can explain on the record why they needed immediate, unsupervised access to emails and servers the day after their husband's funeral. I dusted cinnamon from my fingers. Optics, darling. Remember? Robert stared at me like I'd grown antlers. When did you midnight? I said. I do my best work when men are asleep and women are thinking. I glanced at the server. Thank you, Louis. He tipped his head. Ma'am, he indicated the last envelope. And Mrs. Hale? There's an evidentiary hold for this residence as well. No devices wiped, no documents removed. Sheriff's office is aware. Wonderful. I turned back to my brunch guests. So, shall we talk like adults now, or would you prefer to call your counsel and rehearse lies together? Either way, the living room rug is scotch-guarded. Maya's phone buzzed. She looked down. Her face tried to rearrange itself into neutral and failed. A name flashed on the screen. She flipped it over to late. Girlfriend? I asked Robert, all airy interest. He reddened up to his ears. It's my golf partner. On a Tuesday? At 11 in the morning? How athletic, Maya snapped. Focus, with the crispness of someone who has never held a screaming newborn or a dying man's hand. You cannot do this to me, Jennifer. Oh, darling, I said, leaning forward so she could see the map of years in my face. I can do so much worse. Act I, Scene 2. I let them feel the sting, then offered an ointment. Here's my proposal. You resign any ambition to act as head of Ethan's company. You cooperate fully with the asset preservation. You refrain from touching any accounts until an administrator, ideally me, authorizes payments. In return, I will not release every pretty picture I now legally own to the investors and the press. For now, that's extortion, she breathed. That's leverage, I corrected. Extortion is what you did to Ethan's loneliness. She stood so violently her chair shrieked. I'm not staying here to be insulted. She threw a glance at Robert that shot past tenderness, straight into contempt. Fix this. He didn't move. That told me everything I needed to know about where the lover's loyalty would go when the weather changed. Men are barometers. Their bones tell truth, their mouths won't. They left in a rush of perfume and panic, the door banging like a drum behind them. I waited until the quiet settled, then walked to the azalea pot and retrieved the recorder. The little red light winked. I rewound, pressed play, and listened to my enemies incriminate themselves with their own mouths. Not the bad guy. Long before the accident. Resigned to act. Such a pretty necklace of words. I would wear it to court. James arrived 10 minutes later, still in the same linen shirt, tie crooked in a way that made him look like Mercy got stuck in his collar. He listened without interruption as I replayed the highlights. When it ended, he let out a long breath. "You're terrifying," he said finally. "I'm motivated," I said, "and sufficiently caffeinated." He spread the filed copies on the table, scanning my face between pages. Judge signed faster than I expected. Hearing in 72 hours. We'll need declarations, timelines, exhibits. I've already secured copies of Ethan's email and locked the data room. CFO is on our side. Says Maya tried to log in at AM and failed. Good, I said. Let her fail early. It sets the mood. He slid me a printout. I also spoke to a friend at the SEC. Purely hypothetical chat, of course. If those audits Maya mentioned are real, we'll find out who's been filing what. If anyone's misrepresented valuations, that's not a civil squabble, it's a parade of acronyms. Bring floats, I said. I like a parade. James hesitated, then said, "There's something else. Ethan's phone location history shows he drove to your house the night before he died. Late. Stopped out front. Didn't come in. My throat did a funny thing. He sat outside for 9 minutes. I looked at the urn. He came to say goodbye, I whispered, or to practice it. We were quiet a long time. Grief walked through the room in soft socks and touched the backs of our necks. Ethan's absence was the only honest thing happening in the world. All right, I said finally, wiping my eyes with the napkin that still smelled of butter. Act I. James lifted an eyebrow. Title, Let Them Speak Where It Echoes, I said. Today the house. Tomorrow the office. We drafted invitations to an informal team remembrance at Ethan's company for the next day at noon. Just stories and coffee, we'd say. A little healing time. Maya wouldn't resist an audience. Narcissists never do. I called the COO, a kindly man named Rafi with a soul like a dependable sweater, and explained just enough. He promised to have IT archive the sign-in logs, set up a display with a rolling slideshow of Ethan's life, and make sure the mic worked. Bless the mic. Then I called my sister, Claire, who has a church casserole ministry and a mouth like a scalpel. Bring muffins and that man-hating stare of yours. I told her, we're going to host a wake with footnotes. By late afternoon, the house had been put back into a kind of respectable chaos. I tucked the recorder into my purse and pulled out the little velvet box Ethan had given me once when his first big deal closed a tiny antique compass pendant. "So you always know where you are," he'd said. I clipped it around my neck. North felt like justice. At dusk, the doorbell rang again. Not paper this time. Flesh. Robert stood under the porch light like a boy who'd lost his backpack. "Can we talk?" he asked, hands empty, eyes proud in the way of a man who wants points for showing up. "No," I said. "We can schedule talking. I'm fresh out of improvisation." He stepped inside anyway, as if momentum could be mistaken for grace. "I made a mistake," he said, falling immediately into the oldest, laziest script. "I was lonely. You know how quiet the house got after Ethan moved out. This is not a therapy session." I cut in. "We are not co-signing your justifications. You will tell me what you did with our money." He stopped, aware that confidence sounds like arrogance when your soul's on a spit. "I moved some funds," he said. "Short term, for an investment." "What investment?" "Private placement," he said too smoothly. "A friend's tech incubator." "What friend?" "The one on your phone as G." He closed his eyes, a long blink that looked like the world's smallest prayer. "Gina," he said, "from high school. She runs a fund now." "Gina from high school," I repeated. "Ah yes, the academic degree. Alma mater of bad ideas." He flinched again. "It was legal." "Legality isn't the only yardstick," I said. "Sometimes decency looks better on the hanger." I let him stand there uncomfortable, because people like him call discomfort cruelty when really it's just a mirror. "Here's your script," I said finally, handing him a sheet James and I had drafted. "You will call Rafi in the morning and inform him that you support my appointment as special administrator because stability is key. You will also text Maya that any communication with you henceforth will be conducted through counsel because optics matter. You will use those exact words and then not ad-lib. Jennifer, do it, I said. Or I call Gina tonight and invite her for tea. And I will wear a wire, because apparently that's who I am now. He stared at the paper as if it were on fire. You're enjoying this, he said, half accusation, half marvel. I am alive in it, I said. Enjoyment is for dessert. This is nutrition. He left with the paper and a face like a man who finally found out that sharks don't need to roar to be dangerous. I locked the door, leaned my forehead against the warm wood, and said to Ethan, "Your mother still knows how to cook a plan." The next morning dawned with the ocean smell that steals up from the freeway after rain. I dressed in navy again. If you're going to be a storm, have the decency to look like the sky, and drove to Ethan's offices with Claire's muffins riding shotgun like cheerful grenades. The lobby was a collage of flowers and earnest faces. Rafi hugged me until my bones remembered I was human. Employees trickled in, hands full of memories, eyes full of questions. Maya swept through at 10 till noon in a blazer one shade too triumphant. She kissed 3 cheeks like a politician and climbed the little stage we'd set for stories. Robert hovered near the back, hair combed apology flat. Rafi tapped the mic. It hummed faithful. The slideshow flickered to scenes of Ethan at 12 with a skateboard, Ethan at 23 sleeping on a beanbag with code on his t-shirt, Ethan at 30 laughing with Rafi over a busted prototype. People laughed wetly, cried quietly. Would anyone like to share? Rafi asked. Maya stepped forward, ready like a Broadway understudy. I will, she said, and took the mic with a smile that belonged to other days. I glanced at the ceiling vent above the stage. Inside it, a tiny directional recorder waited like a starling. The room's acoustics had been tested by an engineer who owed me a favor because I once babysat his twins during a fire alarm. Women collect favors the way men collect cufflinks. Only one of those will save your neck. Maya began. Ethan was complicated, she said, tone set to righteous grief. He had a big heart. Sometimes too big. He couldn't see when people were using him. I smiled the kind of smile that makes my sister step back and cross herself. Tell them more, I thought. Tell them how unworthy the dead man was. She did, by the time she was describing financial naivete and reckless generosity. Half the room had gone plank stiff. Claire squeezed my elbow. You sure? She whispered. It'll break their hearts. Broken hearts are old friends here, I said. Trust me. Maya closed with a flourish of, I'll protect his legacy, which made 3 engineers cough simultaneously like the room had dusted them with sarcasm. She handed the mic to Rafi. He looked at me. I nodded. Jennifer, he said, would you like to say something? I walked to the stage, compass pendant warm against my throat, and took the mic. The slideshow behind me happened to land on a picture of Ethan and me on a Ferris wheel, both of us pretending we weren't terrified. I breathed once, the way a diver does when she knows the water is cold and the treasure is real. Thank you, I said to the room, for showing up for my boy, for giving his work a place to live. I looked at Maya. She looked back with a smile that forgot it had fangs. I'm told Ethan was complicated, I went on. It's true. He loved lavishly. He loved past reason. He loved the way scientists fall in love with stars long distance, stubbornly, and with a lot of math, a ripple of little laughs. He also loved the truth. I lifted the recorder sleek, black, undeniable, and set it on the podium. The red light blinked. In honor of that, I said, I've brought some, and before anyone could stop me, I pressed play. There was a half-second of silence before the room filled with the unmistakable sound of my daughter-in-law's voice. I'm not the bad guy, she said, bright and clear as a confession bell. We were finished long before the accident. The air turned solid. People froze mid-breath, like figures in an ice sculpture. Then came Robert's voice, low and unmistakable. 9 months. A gasp went through the crowd, a rustle, a sound like dry leaves. Someone muttered, oh my God. Someone else dropped a coffee cup, and the shattering was a kind of applause. Maya went white first, then red. Turn that off, she shrieked, lunging for the podium. I moved faster. Decades of yoga and indignation will do that for a woman. I slid the recorder into my pocket and stepped aside. It's a funny thing, I said, raising my voice above the panic, how the truth always arrives on time, even when the living don't. Jennifer, this is illegal. She spat, trembling now. Public meeting, I said coolly. You were warned about the evidentiary hold. Everything said in this building belongs to Ethan's estate. And right now, that's me. Her mouth worked like a fish on a dock. Robert started forward, muttering my name like it was a spell that might unmake the day. But I was already past him, past the crowd, walking toward the light of the open doors. Thank you, everyone, I said over my shoulder. I'll see you in court. The elevator doors closed on the sound of whispers that would grow into headlines by morning. Outside, the air smelled of wet asphalt and liberation. Claire followed me, eyes wide. You're either a genius or insane. Both, I said. It's a family recipe. We sat in my car a while, watching traffic blur. Grief and adrenaline are terrible drinking partners. I think Ethan would have loved it, she said softly. The showmanship. I smiled without humor. He'd have hated that it was necessary. She reached over and squeezed my hand. So what's next, General? I started the engine. Act 3. We start collecting the pieces. By that evening, the clip from the meeting had already leaked. Someone had filmed the whole thing on their phone and sent it to 3 coworkers and 1 journalist cousin. It hit the local news before I could even pretend to be shocked. The Chiron read, "Scandal at Memorial. Widow exposes affair between husband and daughter-in-law." I didn't have to lift a finger. The internet did what it does best, spread shame faster than justice. By midnight, Maya's PR veneer had cracked. Her attorney called James, frantic. She wants to settle privately, he said. Of course she does, I murmured. When the lights get bright, the roaches scatter, but I wasn't ready to settle. Not yet. The next morning, I walked into the office of the company Ethan had built from coffee and Conviction Hill Innovations and met with Raffi. He looked like he hadn't slept. Jennifer, he said, closing his door behind me, this thing's viral. Investors are calling nonstop. Maya's name is poison. Robert's stock options are suspended pending the ethics review. What's our move? Our move, I said, is to remind people who built this place. We went through Ethan's old project files, the ones he'd labeled Next Horizon. There were notes, sketches, even voice memos full of ideas he'd never had the chance to patent. Could this work? I asked. Raffi nodded slowly. It's good tech. Half finished, but good. Needs funding. Funding I can get, I said, if I can prove I'm the rightful executor of Ethan's intellectual property. James called mid-meeting. Jennifer, you'll like this, he said. Maya's accounts, 2 of them just got frozen. Transfers to an offshore bank flagged for review, which means she was stealing, I said. Which means she was panicking, James corrected. But yes, possibly both. He paused. Robert's in deep too. Some of his investments were funneling through the same shell accounts. He's just now realizing she used him to launder the proceeds. Of course she did, I said. She learned from the best men. That night, I went home and poured myself a small bourbon, the way Ethan used to on Fridays. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the wall clock. I sat across from his urn again, that small, cruel thing that held too much of what I loved. Well, sweetheart, I said softly, your mother's made a mess. But it's a righteous one. I thought of the compass pendant on my chest and smiled. You told me to always know where I am. I'm somewhere between grief and vengeance, and I'm making good time. 2 days later, the court hearing began. I wore gray silk dignity with pockets. Maya came in looking like an understudy for remorse, dark sunglasses and a black suit 1 size too tight. Robert followed, pale and sweating. Judge Hawthorne was a woman about my age, the kind who could smell lies before you spoke them. I liked her immediately. James laid out our case with calm precision, Maya's infidelity, her attempts to control the company, her misuse of Ethan's funds, her suspicious offshore activity. Then he played a 30-second excerpt of the recording, the part where Maya bragged about taking everything. The judge's eyebrows went up like drawbridges. Maya Hale, she said, is this your voice? Maya's lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him off. Is it your voice? Maya hesitated. It was taken out of context. Context, the judge said dryly, does not usually involve plans to take everything. By the end of the day, the court granted my emergency petition. I was named special administrator of Ethan's estate and acting custodian of all intellectual property pending probate. Maya was barred from accessing accounts, and Robert was ordered to disclose all financial transfers from the past year. When the gavel came down, the sound was better than any sermon. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed like moths. I gave them one sentence. I'm not here for revenge, I said. I'm here for restoration. But oh, the lie of it thrilled me. That night, I got a message from Rafi. Check this. Attached was a forwarded email from one of Ethan's overseas partners, a quiet note from a man in Singapore who'd heard about the scandal. He wrote, "Your son spoke often about a prototype called Project North Star. We were finalizing a joint venture before his accident. If you are handling the estate, perhaps we can finish what he started." I stared at the screen until my bourbon went warm. Project North Star. Ethan had mentioned it once, half asleep on my couch. It's the big one, Mom. The one that makes all the rest worth it. Maybe this was the way to honor him, not with flowers, but with fire. 2 days later, I sat in James's office, files spread like maps. Maya's circling, he said. Her lawyer wants a settlement. Half the assets in exchange for dropping the defamation suit. Defamation? I laughed. She defined herself. She's desperate, he said. Which means she's dangerous. Let her be, I said. Dangerous people dig their own graves. I'll just hand them a nicer shovel. I leaned back, eyes on the window. James, I want to resurrect Project North Star. Legally, under my name, as Ethan's heir and estate administrator. He nodded slowly. It'll take work. Good, I said. Work keeps me from killing anyone, he chuckled. You're remarkable. I'm just tired of women being told to forgive what men destroy, I said. My forgiveness retired the same day my son did. A week passed. The press lost interest, as it always does, chasing shinier scandals. But investors didn't. Ethan's company, my company now, was buzzing again. Rafi and I assembled a small team to rebuild North Star. It felt like breathing again. And yet, there was one problem. Robert wasn't gone. He started showing up. Little things, flowers left on the porch, voicemails about talking things through. He even mailed me a photo of Ethan as a boy with the words, "We're still family." Men always want to be forgiven without changing the locks. Then, one night, I found him in the driveway, leaning against his car. Jennifer, he said, hands raised, I need 5 minutes. You've already had 40 years, I said. Your time's up. I didn't know she'd ruin everything, he said. You thought with the wrong part of you. I cut in. You always did. He looked broken, but I had no pity left. She's calling me nonstop, he said, threatening to tell the press things about Ethan, things that could hurt the company. I smiled slowly. Then she's stupider than I thought. He blinked. Why? Because I own the press now, I said, holding up my phone. I've been funding a journalist through Rafi quietly. He's been digging into her background for weeks. Did you know Maya isn't her real name? He froze. What? She changed it at 23 after a fraud case in Nevada, I said. Sealed records, new identity. Ethan never knew. He stared at me. You found that? I found everything, I said. Now get off my property. When his taillights vanished down the street, I finally exhaled. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from clarity. I walked inside, poured another bourbon, and whispered to the urn, one down, one to go. The next morning, my phone rang. James again. Jennifer, he said, voice tight, Maya's gone. Disappeared last night. Her accounts are drained, her phone's off, her lawyer says she's traveling. Let her run, I said. Truth travels faster. He hesitated. There's more. Before she vanished, she filed a claim contesting your appointment. She's accusing you of emotional instability and misconduct. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. Oh, that's rich. She thinks I'm crazy. James sighed. She's playing dirty. So am I said. She just doesn't know my game has more rounds. That evening, I drafted a letter to Maya, though she'd never receive it. My dear daughter-in-law, you once said you'd take everything. You were right about one thing. I'll let you take something. Take your guilt. Take your lies. Take them far from me, because I'm taking back my life, my son's legacy, and the dignity you both mistook for weakness. When the world finally sees who you are, remember I didn't destroy you. You self-destructed. I just lit the room so everyone could watch. I folded it, sealed it, and set it in the drawer beside Ethan's compass. Then I wrote one more sticky note and placed it on the refrigerator. Act 3, make the storm public. Tomorrow, I'd do just that, and by the time I was done, every person who'd betrayed my son would wish the car crash had taken them instead. Morning came in pale streaks through my kitchen window, but I didn't greet it kindly. The day had a job to do, and so did I. The bourbon had left my tongue dry, but the satisfaction hadn't faded. The world had already started whispering about the vanishing widow, the scandalized husband, and the mother who refused to lie down. I looked at my reflection in the toaster silver hair, sharp eyes, mouth like it had secrets in escrow. Let's finish what we started, Jennifer, I told myself. The world had called me a grieving widow. They'd learn I was a general. That morning's paper ran the headline, Maya Hale missing. Widow's legal victory stirs corporate storm. I didn't even have to bribe a reporter. They loved the smell of intrigue all by themselves. But the smaller article on page 3, that one I arranged. It was titled New Initiative at Hale Innovations, Project North Star Revived to Honor Late Founder. I made sure the photograph showed me standing at Ethan's desk, hand on a folder, expression serene but unbent. The quote was mine. My son built his dream out of truth and courage. I intend to protect both. Now, that wasn't just a sound bite, it was bait. Maya was too vain to let me wear her spotlight. By noon, James called. You're going to like this, he said, his voice carrying the kind of tired amusement that only comes from late nights and moral whiplash. Our favorite fugitive just pinged the system. Where? I asked, tightening my robe belt. Monterey. She checked into a hotel under the name Morgan Hale. Fake ID, real credit card. We'll have her within 48 hours. Let her rest, I said. She's about to lose more than sleep. I hung up and went straight to work. The office felt different now, lighter, cleaner. Maybe it was because the poison had fled. Raffi was already there, sleeves rolled up, excitement sparking in his eyes. Jennifer, you've got to see this, he said. We ran Ethan's prototype overnight. It works. The North Star platform syncs across devices with almost no latency. I blinked. In English, darling, it's faster than anything on the market. Ethan was weeks from a breakthrough. I smiled. Then let's finish it. And make sure the paperwork has my signature on every corner. Raffi hesitated. You sure you want to go that public? Maya's people are rats on a burning ship, I said. And I'm the woman who set it on fire. That night, the house felt alive again. I opened every window, letting the sea air cut through the staleness. I made myself dinner steak, rare, and poured a single glass of red wine. I was mid-bite when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then the voice on the other end purred. Hello, Jennifer. Maya, I said. So you do remember how to use a phone that isn't stolen? She laughed, a sound like champagne going flat. You think you've won. You haven't even seen the board yet. Oh, sweetheart, I said, setting down my fork. I built the board, and I'm holding all the pieces. I have something you want, she said. Something Ethan left behind. That got my attention. Go on. A drive, she said. Encrypted. His real project. You think North Star was the crown jewel? That was a decoy. He told me before he died he hid the good stuff from everyone, even you. My heart did a strange, stubborn leap. You're bluffing. She laughed again. Meet me and find out. Tonight? 12 sharp. Lighthouse Point. Come alone, and then click. I sat in the dark for a long time. The only sound the ticking of the kitchen clock and my pulse arguing with common sense. It smelled like a trap. It was a trap. But if she had something of Ethan's, if she'd stolen his work, I needed to see it. I texted James. Meeting Maya. Lighthouse Point. Midnight. Don't follow yet. Then I slipped Ethan's compass around my neck and drove into the night. The old lighthouse had been decommissioned years ago, but it still stood like a finger raised to heaven. The ocean below crashed and hissed, restless as a secret. The fog was thick, and I had to squint through it, the beam of my flashlight slicing only a few feet ahead. She was waiting, leaning against the railing, hood up, a ghost made of silk and arrogance. "Took you long enough," she said. "I had to stop by the sanity counter," I said. "You should try it." She smiled faintly. "Still funny, even after everything." "I laughed to keep from killing," I said. "Now show me the drive." She held up a small flash drive, the metallic gleam catching what little light there was. Ethan didn't trust anyone. Not you, not Robert, not his investors. He gave this to me because he said I'd know what to do if things went bad. "You mean after you made them go bad?" "Semantics," she shrugged. "You want it? I'll trade." "For what?" "For silence," she said. "You drop the lawsuits. You step back from the company. You let me take what's mine." I laughed, a sharp, clean sound that startled even me. "Maya, if brains were gasoline, you couldn't power a sewing machine." She scowled. "You think you can outsmart me? You think your little public stunt ruined me? You made me famous." "No, darling," I said. "You made yourself infamous. I just gave you better lighting." She stepped closer, her perfume sour in the salt air. "Last chance, Jennifer. Walk away." I met her eyes and smiled. "No," she tilted her head. "Then you should know your husband helped me plan this." And with that, she threw the drive over the railing into the black waves below. For 1 second, I saw silver flash, then nothing. "You're insane," I said. "No," she said softly. "I'm free." She turned and disappeared into the fog. I stood there for a long moment, the roar of the ocean filling my ears. My son's work, his dream, was somewhere down there, swallowed by salt and night. Except something about her timing felt off. Maya never did anything selfless. She'd made sure I saw that throw. She wanted me to believe it was gone. I looked closer at the railing. There, in a shallow groove of rust, sat a small smudge of silver dust glitter. Maya never could resist a bit of drama. She'd palmed a decoy drive. The real one was still with her. I smiled into the dark. "Good," I whispered. "The hunt continues." By the time I got home, James was already waiting on the porch, coat over pajamas, tie missing. "You didn't go alone," he said, half angry, half awed. "I went alive," I said. "That's what counts." He exhaled. "What happened?" "She tried to bait me. Said she had Ethan's real work. Threw a fake drive into the ocean." He frowned. "You sure it was fake?" "I'm sure," I said. "And she's going to use the real one to bargain her way back into the company. Or sell it to someone who'll gut it. Then we have to find her before she does," he said. I nodded. "Oh, we will. She's too proud to hide forever. She'll show herself, and when she does, I'll be waiting with both barrels of the truth." The next morning, my front door was covered in yellow tulips. A bouquet, no note. Robert's doing. He was still trying to act like flowers could fix moral rot. I stepped over them, poured coffee, and turned on the TV. The headline nearly made me drop my mug. "Maya Hale sells tech secrets to competitor. Sources claim she'd done it. She'd gone to war." James called 30 seconds later. "We just got a leak. She met with Silverdyne executives last night, the rival company Ethan always despised. She's offering them proprietary data in exchange for cash and immunity." I grinned slowly. "Perfect, perfect," he echoed. She just handed me motive, evidence, and an audience. That afternoon, I called every investor, every board member, every reporter who'd ever shaken Ethan's hand. I invited them to a press briefing at the company headquarters for the next day. "There will be revelations," I said. "And closure." James sighed. "You really are unstoppable." "Stops a setting on a dryer," I said. "I'm a storm." That night, before I went to bed, I stood by Ethan's urn again. "Tomorrow," I whispered. "Tomorrow they all learn what happens when they mistake my grief for weakness." I touched the compass on my neck and smiled. I'd already written the headline in my mind. "Widow outsmarts corporate thieves, honors son's legacy." But I wasn't just planning justice. I was planning theater. Because if there's one thing Betrayal hates, It's an audience. And I was about to give it the biggest one yet. By dawn, the house smelled like purpose and black coffee. I'd slept 3 hours, and it showed, but exhaustion has never stopped a woman who's made up her mind. I stood at the window, watching the surf batter the rocks below, thinking how much it looked like me. Relentless, loud, impossible to ignore. The press conference was set for 11. Rafi had rented the conference hall at Hale Innovations, and James had polished every legal phrase until it gleamed like a dagger. We weren't just announcing Ethan's project, we were reclaiming it. But I had something else planned too. Something memorable. The compass around my neck felt warm, as if Ethan were whispering, "Make it count, Mom." "Don't worry, sweetheart," I murmured. "I intend to." When I arrived at the building, the parking lot was already a circus of cameras and satellite vans. Reporters shouted questions as I stepped out of my car. "Mrs. Hale, is it true your daughter-in-law sold your son's technology? Are you pressing criminal charges? Will Hale Innovations survive this scandal?" I smiled sweetly, the kind of smile that once got me out of a speeding ticket in 1989. "Ask me again in an hour," I said, and walked past them, heels steady, heart steady. Inside, the hall buzzed with curiosity. Rafi was at the podium, adjusting microphones, bless him. James stood nearby, reading from his notes like a preacher about to deliver the book of Revelation. "Everything ready?" I asked. He looked up. "Almost. But Jennifer, there's something you need to know." I arched an eyebrow. "If it's about wrinkles, I've made peace with them." He almost smiled. "No, Maya's here." "What?" "She showed up 15 minutes ago. With a lawyer. She says she's here to correct misinformation." Of course she was. A spotlight addict never misses her own execution. "Perfect," I said. "Let her watch me burn down her house and call it sunshine." At 11 sharp, the cameras blinked alive, and I stepped up to the podium. "Good morning," I began, my voice firm but calm. "For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jennifer Hale, mother of the late Ethan Hale, founder of this company. I'm here to tell you 2 things, what he built, and who tried to destroy it." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Maya shifted near the back, sunglasses on, pretending to be unbothered. Robert was beside her, gray and hollow, his wedding ring gone. "Ethan's dream was called Project North Star," I continued. "It wasn't just software. It was a vision to connect people without stealing from their privacy. He believed innovation should serve humanity, not exploit it." I paused, letting his name linger. The crowd softened. Even the cameras seemed to blink slower. But, I went on, some people saw his ideals as weakness. They tried to take what wasn't theirs. They thought greed would outsmart integrity. I turned slightly, eyes locking on Maya. They were wrong. The room went electric. Even James looked surprised. 3 nights ago, I said, Mrs. Maya Hale, my daughter-in-law, met with executives from Silverdyne, offering them proprietary data belonging to Hale Innovations. She claimed it was her late husband's gift to her. It wasn't. Gasps. Phones lifted. I could practically hear the click of recording apps. I gestured to the screen behind me. "Allow me to demonstrate." The lights dimmed, and the projection flared to live security footage from the Silverdyne meeting. Maya sitting in a hotel suite, folder in hand, her face clear, her voice unmistakable. "It's all here. North Star's real code. I can get you the rest once I'm reinstated." The footage had been provided by a friendly Silverdyne investor who owed Rafi a favor and maybe a conscience. The room exploded. Reporters shouted. Flashes strobed, voices collided. Maya leapt to her feet. "That's illegal. You can't." "Oh, darling," I said into the mic. "You really should stop saying that. It's becoming ironic." Security stepped forward as her lawyer tried to protest. I raised a hand. "No need to escort her out. Let her listen. This next part's for her." The footage changed. Now it showed Ethan, my boy, in a video diary he'd recorded the week before he died. His voice was soft, steady, tired. "If you're seeing this," he said, "something's gone wrong. Maya's been distant. I think she's hiding something, but I can't prove it yet. So I've locked the true North Star files in an encrypted drive, protected by 2 words only Mom would know." He smiled faintly. "Mom, if you're watching this, the passphrase is our secret. The video cut out. I felt my knees weaken, but I stayed standing. Maya's face was pale now, her sunglasses in her hand. Robert sat frozen, guilt dripping off him like sweat. I turned back to the microphone. Ethan trusted me with his legacy, and I intend to honor it. Effective immediately, I'm rebranding Hale Innovations under a new name, Northstar Technologies, dedicated to transparency, to integrity, and to making sure no one profits from betrayal. The applause was thunderous. I hadn't expected it, but it came, wave after wave. Raffi wiped his eyes. James exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for a year. And Maya was shaking. Whether from rage or fear, I couldn't tell. You can't win, she hissed from the crowd. I still have the drive. I smiled, all teeth. Oh, I know you do. And I know what's on it. She blinked. You couldn't. Oh, I could, I said. That hotel meeting you had? The files you sent them? Those weren't Ethan's originals. They were decoys he created to test your loyalty. They're useless. The real code's been in my safe since the night before the accident. The color drained from her face. You think you're clever, she whispered. No, I said softly. I'm careful. That's a different thing. After the press conference, chaos broke loose. Reporters swarmed, microphones jutted like bayonets, and through it all, I kept smiling. Maya was escorted out by the police for questioning. Robert trailed after her, silent and small. James and I ducked into a back office, shutting the door behind us. Well, he said, collapsing into a chair, that's one way to announce a new company. Subtleties for people with less to lose, I said. He chuckled. You realize you just tanked Silverdine's stock and probably launched half a dozen investigations? Then it's a productive day, I said. Now, about that drive, he nodded. We'll submit it to the court as evidence. It seals the case. Maya's done. Good, I said. But I want more than her defeat. I want her erased from Ethan's story. James studied me. You mean redemption through omission? Exactly. Let her vanish the way decency did when she walked into my son's life. That night, after the adrenaline drained, I drove back to the lighthouse. The sea was calmer now, moonlight slipping across the waves like forgiveness I didn't believe in. I sat on the rocks, Ethan's compass in my hand. We did it, baby, I whispered. She can't hurt you anymore. A gull cried overhead, and I almost laughed. I know, I said to no one. I should probably learn how to live again. I stayed there a long while, until the chill crept into my bones and the stars came out like spectators. When I finally stood, I looked out at the water and said softly, Act V begins tomorrow, because there was still Robert to deal with and I intended to do it properly. The morning after the press conference felt like stepping into clean air after a storm. The headlines were merciless. Widow exposes corporate theft. Maya Hale in custody, investigation widens. The mother WHO would not break. I cut the articles out and set them in a drawer with Ethan's compass and a lock of his baby hair I'd saved since the day he was born. I whispered to him, You can rest now, sweetheart. Your story's safe. But there was still one loose thread, Robert. My husband, my betrayer, the man who traded our marriage for a handful of cheap affection and ended up losing everything worth having. I knew he'd come crawling eventually. Men like Robert always do. They confuse forgiveness with nostalgia and think you'll confuse pity with love. That afternoon, he did just what I expected. He showed up at the house uninvited, his tie crooked and his face gray with regret. He had a small suitcase with him. That detail almost made me laugh. He still thought there was a world where I'd let him stay. Jennifer, he said softly, standing on the porch like a ghost who'd lost his key. Can we talk? I leaned on the doorframe, arms folded. Talking implies you'll tell the truth, Robert. I've yet to see evidence you remember how. He sighed. You're enjoying this. No, I said. I'm completing it. He hesitated, his gaze darting to the living room window. The police came by. They wanted to question me about the financial transfers. I didn't know what she was doing, Jen. She told me it was for a trust, Ethan's trust. Robert, I said slowly, if lies were an Olympic sport, you'd have a gold medal and a parade. I swear, he said. I never meant for any of this. I was lonely. You shut me out. I stared at him, almost amused. You slept with our daughter-in-law, Robert. Not because you were lonely. Because you were bored. He flinched, but I didn't soften. She used me, he said weakly. She said Ethan was cheating on her, that their marriage was over. I didn't know who she really was. Neither did Ethan, I said. But the difference is, he paid with his life. You'll pay with your comfort. He blinked, confused. What does that mean? It means, I said, stepping closer, that while you were trying to sell off my son's company behind my back, I had our lawyer look into every transfer you've made for the last 5 years. The investment fund, fraudulent. The tech incubator doesn't exist. You've been funneling money into a shell company she controlled. You are, legally speaking, broke. His mouth fell open. You drained my accounts. No, I said. You drained your own. I just made sure the drain led straight to her prison fund. His face went red. You can't do this to me. I smiled sweetly. You did it to yourself. I just held the mirror. He stepped forward, desperate now. Jennifer, please. I have nowhere to go. I'm under investigation. The press my job, they'll crucify me. Then consider it penance, I said. But don't worry, I'm not cruel. You can stay somewhere familiar. He frowned. What do you mean? I bought your father's old fishing cabin by the lake, I said. The one with no heat and a leaky roof. You can live there, alone. Think of it as spiritual rehab. And if you ever step foot back on my property again, I'll make sure every reporter in this city gets the security footage from the day of Ethan's funeral. He swallowed. You wouldn't, oh, Robert, I said softly. You really don't know me at all. I closed the door on him and didn't look back. For the first time in months, the house was quiet in a way that didn't ache. The lilies from the funeral were long gone, the walls repainted, the air fresh with lemon oil and peace. I walked to the table where Ethan's urn still sat, and beside it, I placed a new plaque, Ethan Hale, 1990 to 2024. Dreamer, builder, truth seeker. And beneath it, a smaller one I'd had engraved just for me. His mother finished the fight. I poured 2 cups of coffee, one for me, one for him, out of habit. Your father's gone, I said softly. Your wife's in custody. The company's yours again. Or maybe it's ours now, mother and son, rebuilding the dream. The wind rattled the window slightly, and I smiled. I'll take that as agreement. 3 months later, North Star Technologies was officially launched. Investors poured in, drawn not just by the product but by the story, the mother who refused to let greed bury her son twice. I hated the word inspirational, but I let them use it if it kept the money flowing. James became our counsel of record, Rafi our CEO, and me, chairwoman, 65, widowed, and running a multi-million-dollar tech firm. On the morning of the launch, I stood at the podium again, the same place where I'd once exposed a betrayal. This time, I spoke of beginnings. North Star is about finding our way when the world tries to blind us, I said. It's for everyone who's ever been underestimated, silenced, or betrayed. It's for my son, and for anyone who still believes truth can win. The crowd stood and applauded. Cameras flashed. Somewhere in that blinding light, I felt Ethan smiling. After the event, James found me outside on the balcony. You did it, he said quietly. You really did it. I shrugged, the wind teasing my hair. I didn't do it alone. Ethan left the breadcrumbs. I just followed them. He smiled. You know, most people would have collapsed under all that. The loss, the betrayal, the press. But you turned it into fuel. Women of my generation learned early, I said. When life tries to drown you, breathe water until it tastes like air. He chuckled softly. What now, Jennifer? I looked out over the city, the skyline bright with new hope. Now, I live. Maybe I travel. Maybe I write a book. But whatever I do, I won't apologize for surviving. He nodded, then hesitated. You know, I think Ethan would be proud. I smiled. He already told me. James frowned. He what? I touched the compass pendant. When we unlocked his files, there was a message hidden in the code. Just one line. Mom, you're my North Star. James's eyes softened. That's beautiful. It's better than beautiful, I said. It's enough. That night, back home, I sat by the window with a glass of red wine and watched the lights of the city blink like stars on the horizon. The sea below whispered its old lullaby, and for once, I didn't hear sorrow in it, only peace. I took a deep breath, let it out slow, and whispered, Act VI. Closure. I thought about all the women who would read about me and think, if she can do it, maybe I can too. Let them know you can lose everything, your child, your husband, your old self, and still rise from the ashes in heels and pearls, holding a legal brief and a plan, because revenge, when served with grace, isn't cruelty, it's clarity. And as for me, I didn't just survive betrayal, I redefined it. When people speak my name now, they say it with a mix of respect and fear, and that, my dear, is exactly how a woman should be remembered.